In Matthew 16, verse 19, Jesus is recorded as saying, "I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." What are the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and who wields them? What does it mean to bind and loose? Is the authority in heaven or on earth? A consideration of context helps as we try to decipher precisely what Jesus was saying and what the answers to these questions might be. Firstly, let's look at the historical context. This verse forms part of a discussion between Jesus and his disciples within the district of Caesarea Philippi, verse 13. This was a small town north of Galilee with a largely Gentile population. It was within this setting, and quite possibly with the salvation of the Gentiles in mind, that Jesus engaged with his disciples. While the initial conversation was with the broader group, we see this in verse 13 through 15, the conversation narrowed to a seemingly exclusive exchange between Peter and Jesus. Again, this can be seen in verses 16 to 19. Significantly, however, it is argued that Peter served as the official spokesperson and therefore as a representative for the broader group of disciples who would eventually go on to spread the good news of the gospel in various parts of the world. Binding and loosing were technical terms used by rabbis to make pronouncements regarding what was permitted and what was not. To bind was to forbid, to loose was to permit. The passage therefore likely carries new legislative connotations. Secondly, let's look at the historical context. The discussion pertains to Jesus' identity as the Messiah, verses 13 through 16, and the implications thereof for the advancement of the kingdom through a particular agent and vehicle. The agent is Peter, and by extension the other disciples, and the vehicle is the church, verses 17 through 19. The rock metaphor is related to the foundation stone imagery, which is applied in the New Testament to Jesus as the Christ in 1 Peter 2, verse 6 to 8, and to the apostles in Ephesians 2:20, and again in Revelations 21, verse 14. The phrases "shall be bound" and "shall be loosed" are in the future perfect tense and are more accurately translated "shall have been bound" and "shall have been loosed." With these contextual observations in mind, Jesus' meaning and the answers to the questions become clear. Jesus is the Messiah, and in time the responsibility will rest with Peter and the apostles, God's chosen agents, to share the good news of the gospel message with the entire world. The gospel message and everything associated with it is the key to the kingdom. Binding and loosing relate to the task of the apostles to convey the new covenantal legislature, to explain how the conditions for kingdom access have changed, from an adherence to the law to salvation by grace through faith. The future perfect tense in the passage suggests that it is not heaven that will agree with the decisions of the apostles, but that the apostles will simply pass on the decisions already made in heaven, especially as it pertains to Christ and the salvation he has wrought. This salvific work of Christ and the sharing thereof by the apostles will serve as a foundation. God's people, the church, will continue to build upon this foundation, ushering Christian converts into the kingdom well into the future. And finally, no work of the enemy will derail it.